Welcome into episode 2 of the Mecca. I'm here with Ian, JetsCentral, and we've been waiting a while to get this new episode uploaded. Certainly a ton of material to cover, not only with our teams, but around the NFL landscape. And it's really this is really the midpoint of the NFL season. And Ian, it's great that we have a chance to kind of just spew out some things and get things off of our chest right now, man.
Yeah, I know. I can't wait. I can't wait to dive into, not only just our teams, but with, college football and quarterback play. I'm totally excited. Ready to dive right in.
Absolutely, man. And it's funny, man, living, near Philadelphia, even though being a Giants fan, it's about the toughest time I can ever remember, man, because at least with you, the Dolphins have never been really incredibly legit.
Yeah.
When they were legit, they had, one of your favorite players and one of my favorites, Chad Pennington. That had to be some cognitive dissonance is when, you don't want to root for a player, but he's playing for the enemy. And I guess with Chad Pennington, but they were never really a threat. So do you think it's rough kind of being a Giants fan near Philly? I'll first start off with that kind of point.
I think, for you, I think it would definitely be tough because, looking at the the city of Philadelphia and their fans, they definitely love football. Down here it's definitely more Miami Heat, but there are some Dolphins fans and stuff like that. But like you said before, the Dolphins they've never really been that constant playoff team. They're never really like a Super Bowl threat or anything like that. But for me, it's okay. Of course, you got to hear some stuff every time you go out rocking green. But, nevertheless, it's all good. It's all trash talk, and I'm all cool with that.
Yeah. I kind of like it, too. My friends, are kind of engaged now. And, it's weird. When the Eagles are down, you can't really have those discussions. But I want to start off, and I'll be completely honest. It's been a hectic week. I was able to go to some of the football games, and I haven't been able to go on the Game Pass and really watch the fourth quarter of Jets-Dolphins. I really wanted to watch it. So you're obviously qualified, being JetsCentral, to go ahead and kind of break down the game. I heard Buster Skrine kind of had a rough quarter. Matt Moore is like the classic interim quarterback. He can't really carry it over a stretch, but for a quarter he can jolt an offense. And I'm sorry to bring it up, but it's been a couple of days. Just talk about the fourth quarter of that game and really how the Jets finished the game.
Right. Well, up 14, we have a 14-point lead. The Jets have a 14-0 lead against the Miami Dolphins, entering the fourth quarter. And I think it was around 12 minutes left is when the Miami Dolphins started to really kind of, come alive. But, it's so disappointing as a Jet fan, watching the New York Jets prepare. They come out with a great game plan. It actually working. And then once it actually does work, they just go away from it, And then once they go away from it, that's when the other team starts to gain or get that new life, that breath of fresh air. They start coming back. And, the one thing I will say is that I have to credit Miami. When their numbers were called, they made plays. They caught the ball. When Matt Moore was called upon, he came in. I thought he did a good job managing the game, honestly. From unbiased, view. But at the end of the day, the Jets just can't blow these 14-0 leads against division rivals. If you want to be a good team, you can't do that. So, really disappointing. But, I'll just leave it at that. It can't happen again.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you look at So what was it during the first half that the Jets were shutting down Miami? And what happened in the fourth quarter? Did they play kind of soft cover, for defense, cover 3, and just let Miami have underneath throws? What changed in that last period of that game?
I think the biggest thing was starting out, the Jets were just extremely balanced, running the ball effectively, passing the ball effectively, throwing in a little bit of trickery, not just these basic plays. And I think as the game went on and things started to roll the Jets' way, I think it's just a mindset thing when it comes to play calling, because when you're up by 14, or when the Jets were up by 14, I think just the overall mindset of the coaching staff, excuse me, was, just play not to lose. Don't step on their throat. Let's just try to run the ball, first down, second down, third down, waste time. Just check it down. Don't even go for the first down. Just like try to, use up as much play clock as possible and hopefully escape with the win. And then on the defensive side of the ball, it just playing that off coverage, like you just mentioned, playing the zone, just kind of that mini prevent defense. And, it just try to keep them in bounds and stuff. And as opposed to, being aggressive, trying to get after the passer, trying to get these turnovers. So really disappointing, just an overall switch on what the Jets were doing. It working. Once it did work, we went away from it to try to escape from a win.
Yeah, usually a lot of times, like you play like not to mess up the game, not to turn it over. You always play not to lose in it, and then you really end up losing games. In fact, there was a great example. I'm trying to recall, actually. There was, Seattle, Los Angeles, right? So Seattle had the ball at the 20-yard line up by 3. And it was maybe like 4th and inches to win the game, and they wouldn't go for it. They took a field goal, and then it's a 6-point game, and you give the ball back to the other team. We saw in Oklahoma State, Texas, them sit on the football, not be aggressive, and go out and win. I love when my team is trying to ice a game, and the team has no timeouts, and on second down, you call a play action. That's what Big Ben and Brady are the best at. Those third downs in the fourth quarter to ice out games. And it sounds like probably McCown, just from not even watching the game, but, following the result, it sounds like he had like 3rd and 8s or whatever. He would just run Forte into the line. And then it would be very difficult. And on 3rd and 8, he'd even take a sack or just throw it underneath to stay in bounds. It's probably what ended up happening.
Exactly. Describe it to a T. So that's exactly what happened. Just trying to waste time, hopefully, basically just the mindset being, hey, we have a lead. Let's just try to hurry up and escape with a win. So
yeah,
that's kind of what happened.
And so you look at Miami. It's so interesting, man, when I look at Miami, because Adam Gase, to me, he just seems like a grim ghost, honestly. I mean, like him and Jay Cutler, and I know someone's calling right now. But I apologize about this. I'm gonna actually wait 1 second until it's gone. But that's part of the podcasting business. So Adam Gase, okay, he honestly just doesn't. He seems kind of dead on the sidelines. Like I expect a coach to be a little bit enthusiastic. I get that he's a football mind, but he's just a quirky personality that almost shows like almost no personality. And it's just interesting how these Dolphins wake up. Like, I thought they were so dead in Atlanta. They were 14-point dogs there, and then the Jets are handling them. McCown's having so much success. I mean, what do you make of the Dolphins now? What do you make of Adam Gase? And then there's an unwatchable Thursday game that they're taking part of, Baltimore-Miami. Most Thursday night game ever coming up tomorrow.
Yeah, I can't actually wait for that game. I'm going to be pulling for the Ravens, obviously. But Adam Gase, man, it was definitely a weird case when trying to study, what he does, what he brings. First thing I'll note is, like, I love his system. I love what he tries to do. He tries to do a balanced attack. He runs a lot of shotgun. That's like the biggest flaw to me that I've noticed, regarding his system is, like, anytime the quarterback's under center, it's a run. Anytime it's, he's in shotgun, it's a pass. That gets really predictable. Sure. But overall, yeah, I like his system. I like his demeanor. But I will say, like you just said, he does have that Todd Bowles factor where he just sits there and, like, doesn't smile. He doesn't freak out, whether things are going good or things are going bad. He's just really – yeah, like, I'm definitely not – I'm not a fan of that. I like my coaches to be fiery, but obviously not over the top like Rex Ryan. Like, to where
Caldwell too. It's the same sort of thing. And like that game in Pittsburgh last year, it made me not even want to watch football. It was just they just didn't have heart in that game at all, Miami. And it seems like some quarters they're just off.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And it's just weird because I typically like my coaches to show more emotion. But, being a Jet fan, watching Rex Ryan for all these years, he would just go over the top with it, where if the Jets score one touchdown, he would still be celebrating by the time the next series rolls around and the Jets go 3-and-out. It's like, what's going on? But actually, speaking of coaches, an interesting topic I wanted to bring up and ask you.
Sure.
Assuming Ben McAdoo gets the boot at the end of the season, who do you think? Give me two or three potential coaching candidates that you would like the Giants to see replace McAdoo.
Sure, and it's funny, man. Like, the game against Denver, I really was going to wait and see on Ben, and I honestly think it's tough because Seattle is one of those teams that's incredibly elite. So without the wide receivers, it's such a difficult matchup that I think Ben, if he goes to 7-9 or 8-8, can have a chance, except I still saw awful tendencies during the game. If, I don't know if it was the national game by you, but on 2nd and 5, they were still lining up and they were still, throwing dumb slant routes and they were still refusing to really settle into running the football. But without Beckham now, the team is trying to build more of that identity with Mac. But so essentially the coaches that I would like to see, I think that you look at Shaw at Stanford, he's really righted that ship. So if he's ready to go to the National Football League, that's a guy that's just, you're even smiling. You know that David is really a classy head coach. He runs a really tight ship. He runs the football. He's tough. There's almost nothing you can nitpick about the guy. His teams are competitive. He's focused. His teams get better during the season. And he's a guy that can translate right to the NFL level. I think he has NFL ties already. So David Shaw is a guy. If you look at the college route, I look at David Shaw as a guy that would be very exciting. Then, I don't know. I think Harbaugh's still staying at Michigan for the long haul. I'm a big believer, though, in Jimmy Harbaugh. I think that they don't have a quarterback there. They have great recruits on defense. Jim is really intense. I think he's actually better than his brother John. What he did with San Francisco was incredible. John had the 1 year of Flacco where they were fortunate in Denver that the guy overran the football and Flacco just hit the jackpot and they went off and won. John's he's not a terrible coach, but I think he's slightly above mediocre, a decent head coach. Other names, for the New York Giants, of course, like John Gruden is a guy that I just happen to love. But realistically, around the NFL, the guy who's going to get hired, Ian, is this guy. I think Matt Cavanaugh of the LA Rams is an offensive coordinator from Michigan. So I totally see him getting, looking at the Cleveland Browns job. I can totally see him fitting in with Kaiser. So that guy Cavanaugh is going to take a lead. The quarterback's coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is a guy that has Giants ties. So it's difficult, though, Ian. You look right now at the NFL, and there's a couple of guys like the Ryans, the Chip Kellys that are in the booth calling plays, but there really isn't that that white ghost of coaching, right? It's kind of a thin coaching draw, it seems now, Ian, doesn't it? When you look at the NFL level of coordinators being head coaches.
I totally agree with you. I actually think David Shaw is the perfect fit for the New York Giants. When I think, and again, assuming Ben McAdoo, gets fired, I think David Shaw fits what the Giants franchise kind of resembles and wants out of a head coach. Just a class act guy, a guy who's going to come in, be professional, really just stay true to himself and his roots, and really just try to turn the franchise around by doing what he wants, not trying to, do these strange otherworldly things that, like a Chip Kelly or something like that. He just stays true to himself. He knows what works. And I think that's what the Giants need.
Traditional.
As far as, agreed. Yeah. And I just think that's such a perfect fit for the Giants. But, David Shaw at Stanford, it's a real interesting thing to look at because I think Stanford being competitive every single season, being in the Pac-12, the Pac-12 is definitely not as good as the ACC and the Big Ten and all these other conferences. So you can make an argument that David Shaw is really just a few years away from potentially winning the Pac-12 on a consistent basis, because that conference is just so wide open. So I do think it will take some money and some convincing to pry him away from, Stanford, which is such a great program.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I look at Stanford though, and they just don't have. They're never going to really get the athletes Alabama and Georgia has. Maybe I think because of the academic standards. It's a very specific recruiting base. I think you can honestly get bored at a place like Stanford. I really do. Just like it's pretty, every year's kind of consistent. You have such a slight room for error in college. It's not like he's remaking a franchise. I totally see him leaping to actually Indy or the Giants. He's a guy that with NFL roots, I really see him leaving Stanford because it's not like, Stanford is a decent hotbed for football, but it's not like an SEC job. It's not like Kirby. It's not like Saban at Alabama. It's not even like an LSU or a Texas. It's on the West Coast. You can't, like I said, you can't recruit incredible athletes. So I can see him moving on. And you know what, Ian? I know head coaches in college a lot better than I actually know a lot of these coordinators at the NFL level. I'm trying to think of guys that, are coordinators that might be able to have a head coaching job. And a lot of them, you haven't really heard of, or they don't speak that much, like Robert Saleh, maybe of San Francisco. Maybe the Vikings defensive coordinator seems like he'd be pretty good. You just have to look at the units and how they improve. But for me, when you look at coaching candidates, you always talk about the TV guys, or you might even talk about college guys.
Yeah, two coordinators to watch that I think could potentially get head coaching interviews. One, the offensive coordinator from Detroit, Jim Bob Cooter. I love his offensive system, and I think he's definitely really highly regarded as far as Sean McVay was really highly regarded amongst the NFL minds, the owners, the GMs. Everybody wanted him. They knew he was kind of like a hot new thing. I think Jim Bob Cooter is in that same category. Maybe not with the electric turnaround. He might not jumpstart a team. But I do think he'll bring new life into a team. And another coordinator that could, potentially get a head coaching interview is Terrell Austin, the defensive coordinator. I think his name has bounced around a little bit, as far as head coaching jobs go. And I know the Philadelphia Eagles were really taking a hard look at him, and they were deciding between him and Doug Peterson. They obviously opted for Peterson, and that looks like a great move. Obviously stemming from the Andy Reid tree. But Terrell Austin and Bob Cooter, I definitely think are two guys to watch out for, in regards to coordinators becoming head coaches.
Right. I was actually going to mention Jim Schwartz as a possible name, because his defense is rolling right now. Schwartz, and then I don't ever know, Ian. I'm curious about this one. Matt Patricia. I don't even know where this guy came from. He came from some kind of laboratory, and he just seems like an engineer out there. Maybe he doesn't have the moxie to ever be a head coach, but he doesn't want those responsibilities. So, do you ever see him leaving New England or ever being a coach somewhere, a head coach?
I do with McDaniels. Speaking of the Patriots, but I don't with Patricia. I think he's definitely one of those guys that is just better off as a coordinator. Now, of course, he can't go ahead and prove me wrong because I haven't seen him as a head coach. But there are some guys, notable names. Wade Phillips, he's much better coordinator than head coach. Right. Chan Gailey, much better coordinator than head coach. So you look around the league, and there are just guys out there.
Is going to be in that category.
Agreed. I just think the task at hand with Cleveland, I just think, in regards to Hugh Jackson, I just think he wants to run things his way. And I think he's not kind of seeing the big picture. I think he's just saying, here's my offense, you run it, and if you fail at it, you're benched. I totally disagree with the whole DeShone Kizer being benched every halftime like it's baseball. This isn't baseball. You can't just pull a starting – you're not just pulling a starting quarterback if he just doesn't have a good day. I disagree with it. I think Hugh Jackson's in over his head, in part due to his ego. I mean, if that makes any sense.
It makes sense, and maybe the ownership is forcing all this drama and turmoil there with Sean Kaiser. But you look at Carson Wentz; that's the only way to grow, man, is through failure. You look at Aikman's years, you look at Peyton Manning's years, and they start out and had terrible rookie seasons, but you stayed in the system. Greg Williams is a new defensive coordinator; everybody's new. You need continuity, and that's why I said that the Philadelphia Eagles were a successful team. Now, I want to talk about the New York Jets because I look at head coaches, and my favorite head coach really for the next decade, I just love Sean McVay. If I had to choose any coach to play for, it would easily, I think, be Sean because, and of course that's excluding maybe the great ones such as Carroll or Bill Belichick, but Sean has such an energy about him. He coaches one side of the football. He's a quarterback whisperer, and I really look at Coach McVay, and he has that young energy. He has a balanced offense, and that's why a head coach that I think is going to be incredibly successful and a guy that I'd even look at the NFL level, and he's right in your state. I think Scott Frost is just a home run hire. I just think guys at the college level, I know that, he's associated so much with Nebraska, but aren't there some guys in college that you could see just going to the NFL and rocking it? I mean, it just seems like a great crop of college guys that can just come through and rock it at the NFL level. Even Lincoln Riley. For me, you're never too young for the job now in the NFL.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the fact that you can never be too young. I love the new blood, the new wave of coaching. I think it brings a certain style of energy. I think it brings a certain style of I think it brings an attitude towards the building, definitely new life. It's you see it in baseball all the time when, a club will fire their manager and they'll just promote the next, the AAA manager or the hitting coach. And it gets old, I think. I think sometimes the best thing to do is just to get some new life in the building. As far as Scott Frost to the Jets, definitely interesting. But the thing is with Frost and Lincoln Riley is I don't know how their offenses will suit in the NFL. You have to assume that they're going to change some things, but I just don't buy that they could just come in and just run this up-tempo, fast-paced, this system, not so much like Chip Kelly, but just a similar system like Chip Kelly, just not ran the same way. I just have a hard time buying into those spread systems, those air raid systems working on a consistent basis in the pros. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that they maybe even pull back, and that's why I like Scott Frost and Lincoln, because they're not just like a Cliff Kingsbury. They're not just like a coach that just always go with tempo. So, and then you have the congruency. I don't think you've ever had a college coach come in and groom the quarterback, but you look at the Eagles and they have Doug Peterson, and it just really helps. When you have a freakish quarterback, if you guys, the New York Jets are probably going to draft a quarterback next year. And if you guys hit on the one guy, it has to be exciting kind of being a Jets fan, because you look at what the Eagles did, you look at what you guys did with Sanchez. The NFL is a league right now, Ian, where there's so many teams that are in flux at the NFL level, and it's so even across the board that it comes down to just third down and quarterback play, even more than ever.
Totally, yeah, I totally agree with you. And it's funny you bring it up because, I watch the draft every year, ever since I was a little kid. And, I always wonder, because the Jets have never had, the first pick or the second pick in the draft. And obviously we've never had, the franchise or, game in, game out, Matt Stafford, Ryan Roethlisberger. We haven't had that, or I haven't experienced that, in my life. And every year I watch the draft, and whoever's picking number one, I remember watching Carolina pick Cam Newton, and then the following year, the Colts get their guy with Luck, and obviously the Redskins with Griffin. Then the following year, it was kind of a down year for quarterbacks, and so on. And I'm always sitting here wondering, as a Jet fan, I always just think to myself, man, would it be nice for the Jets just to have that top quarterback spot and just lock it down for the next 15 years.
And go to Dallas,
but it never happens.
Absolutely party,
Yeah.
Because the thing is, when you draft that guy, man, listen, you don't have to. You can fix 7 or 8, months until you actually find out what you get, And then that whole first year is incredible. Look at what the Bears are having with Mitchell Trubisky. Look at Deshaun Watson's first year. Even in Cleveland, I still go back, and this is kind of even a little bit weird. But I'll even – have you ever watched the Cleveland Browns fans react to Johnny Manziel? Have you ever searched that video on YouTube?
Yeah.
There was one guy that literally looked like he was going to die out of happiness that the Browns drafted Johnny Manziel. It was like the greatest day of his entire life. Like, bars in Cleveland were going insane. And I think it is the coolest point of a franchise. And to tell you the truth, having Eli Manning, it is nice because Eli's such a great guy, so nice. He's a Super Bowl contender, so you do have that. But sometimes when it's draft time, you do kind of envy the franchises that look for the one, and it really is a special feeling. You can't take it for granted, man, because then you'll be stuck with your dude. You'll be stuck with a Roethlisberger, a Flacco, a Stafford. You'll be locked in, and you won't have that shot in you.
Yeah, it's definitely a feeling that I really want to have. I'll go nuts if the Jets draft Josh Rosen on draft day in April. I would just, God, that would be great. But going back, yeah. Oh my God, I would love that. I would love if the Jets just made a bold move, saying this is our guy. And I think Rosen's the perfect fit for New York anyway. But I just remember specifically watching the Panthers take Cam Newton. Of course, some pundits out there they criticize them, saying that they made a mistake by not taking Gabbert out of Mizzou. And I just remember Cam Newton, watching him at Auburn and just saying to myself, man, it must be really nice to be a Panther fan right now. Everybody's buying the one jersey, this weird dual threat quarterback that's also 6'5". What? 6'5", 240, but he could also outrun, linebackers and stuff. And it was just I just remember watching those games and me being, man, I want the Jets to have a polarizing player like that, especially at the quarterback position.
A game changer at that position,
right?
Like Carson Wentz is. But you look at quarterbacks, and it's funny, man. I think that each year everybody kind of gets maybe even more intelligent with this process of picking quarterbacks. You want to have a guy that has enough talent, and really with Mitchell Trubisky and Deshaun, the arm strength was questioned a little bit. It still maybe can be with these young guys. Deshaun Kaiser is really an interesting case study because I think that he really has unbelievable potential. I'm telling you, man, when I look at Deshaun Kaiser, there shouldn't be a problem with him at all. And in sports so much, though, you can see what Sean McVay did with Jared Goff. You can see certain teams where if you go and get drafted into the right fit, you flourish and the best gets taken out of you. And you just start to wonder about some of these guys that have failed, whether it be Lawson, whether it be, I guess, Blaine, how much is it with the system, right? And you have to consider that next year for your Jets. You have to consider getting this rookie in a beautiful system with a consistent message.
I would, it's funny that you bring it up because we just got done talking about the coaches. And now we're on to quarterbacks. And ironically, the Jets might need to replace both at the end of the season. And one guy that I'm really looking at, if we cannot get Harbaugh from Michigan, I think he would just bring tons of energy, tons of positive vibes to the new.
I lean more towards the Rex style than the Todd Bowles style anyway, when you're looking at the next guy.
Me too. I just think at some points throughout the game, you have to keep it under wraps. When you're down by 14 and you or when you score a touchdown, stop celebrating like you just won a playoff game. You know what I mean? That was the issue with Rex that would always irritate me. But as far as, the projecting on 2018, 19 and so forth, if the Jets can't get Harbaugh, the guy I'm looking at is Bruce Arians from Arizona. I think he will get canned at the end of the season. And, me personally, I've never been a fan of Carson Palmer, even back in Cincy. And if the New York Jets can hire Bruce Arians, who at one point was Todd Bowles' leader or, a boss, I think it would be really ironic. And I think that if the New York Jets could get Arians and then draft Rosen, that would just put the New York Jets, 10 steps in front of where they actually are today, if that, makes any sense. Or I don't know what your thoughts are on Arians.
It's good. We're naturally going to have a natural disagreement on this show, which is good for this podcast. Me and you think a lot, alike a lot. And, but I look at Bruce, first issue is you have health concerns. The guy has been through the ringer. He's really, how much mileage does he have left in the tank? Like, if you look at Jim Bob Cooter, he's in his, I think his late 40s, early 50s. You want to have a guy that you can grow with this quarterback, like a Doug Peterson, like a Ben Mack. So he would honestly, just because of his age, he would I'd kind of disqualify Arians a little bit. And, in terms of his staff, man, to be honest, he did have a nice season with Arizona, but I look at the talent that they have on the defensive side of the football, and I've been disappointed with them because I think Honey Badger is so legit. I think Peterson, Buffet, I look at their secondary. It's awesome. They have talent at linebacker with Dansby and guys, and they can never string it together. They've looked embarrassing as of late. Last season was really rocky. The guy just seems like he's honestly headed towards retirement. So I couldn't, that's kind of my feelings on Bruce, though, right now.
Totally hear you, totally understand it, and I think you made great points. But I will say this to kind of just end this conversation.
Sure.
Is that I think that the one thing that draws me to Arians is not just like the success that he's had in recent years with Arizona, but just the fact that he's worked with Andrew Luck and Ben Roethlisberger, and he knows what it takes to build that franchise quarterback. And I think a guy as talented as Rosen, if he walks in the building, I think Arians, with his knowledge of the current game and maybe his failures and successes with Carson Palmer, and then his experiences with Luck and Roethlisberger, I think you're just bringing in two heavyweights and kind of just combining them. I think that could really build a dominant quarterback.
And maybe if you get him on a short, like 3 to 4 year window, he can hire.
Agreed.
I go right up to the booth. That's an interesting track record. I like that you mentioned, Andrew. I think he worked with Peyton, which is really cool. So, absolutely, anybody from that stem and that tree. I'm going to go to some of our topics, Ian, here, as we're going to kind of go rapid fire this time. We're going to kind of have some fun with some topics that we discussed. And I don't have a list in front of me, but I think I would like, if you would want, I would like to talk about some running backs. And I think the best running backs in the NFL, who are the best ones. And I don't know, I guess I can maybe start out and try to come up with running backs that I would want, to lead my franchise.
Go for it.
So, what's interesting here, Kareem Hunt and Leonard Fournette, these are the rookie running backs. You have Todd Gurley bouncing back. I look at Leonard Fournette, though, and I think that Leonard Fournette, the way he runs the ball, unfortunately, I think he's going to have injury trouble in his career. He runs it as recklessly as almost anybody, and that's part of the joy of watching Leonard play, is that I think for these next 2 to 3 years, he's going to be a transcendent player in this National Football League. But I'm actually going to go with Kareem Hunt. I think Zeke is a better talent than Kareem Hunt. I think Zeke is faster, can make more plays. But again, you don't have, with the off-the-field issues with Zeke. Kareem Hunt's a guy from Toledo, kind of a quiet personality. I'd lead towards Kareem Hunt. There is a guy that I just realized that I forgot out of that list. I'm not going to say actually. And I'm going to take Kareem probably as the number one back for a future team that I want. Power back that just doesn't go down after contact, nifty as heck, and just gets every yard and really has that hunger being a fourth-round pick out of a MAC school.
Right. And yeah, I love your pick. I love what Kareem Hunt brings to the table. I love how he comes in as like a later mid to late round draft selection, comes in, earns the starting spot, and right off the bat is just absolutely electrifying. That I think is a rare trait, especially considering, the Chiefs having a hard time trying to find Jamal Charles' replacement. He comes in right off the bat in week one, and it's not a fluke. I mean, this guy, he can run the ball. I think he runs low to the ground. I think he does possess that nice little combination of speed and power. I think he's really good out of the backfield. But my choice, I got to go Leonard Fournette. I think this guy's a man amongst boys. Looking at what this Jacksonville Jaguars offensive line and team kind of consists of in recent years, they haven't been able to run the ball. You draft Fournette at whatever it was. I think it was 4. You draft him, and now all of a sudden this Jaguars running game comes alive. Leonard Fournette is an absolute beast. I mean, he's a machine. There's really nothing that you can do to kind of game plan for him. I mean, I think it was 24% of the snaps he played in the SEC, it was against a loaded box. I mean, that's insane. And I think looking at Leonard Fournette and just inserting him into the lineup, as a defensive coordinator, you have to prepare for it. You have to figure out a way to stop him. And by trying to figure out how to stop him, you obviously that opens up the passing game. So I would take Leonard Fournette in a heartbeat.
So much power. He runs a little like Dickerson, and he's a guy that, just like you're gonna have a really tough football team. It's funny, like why can't Leonard? I don't think he's ever had a quarterback in his life, and I agree. Know if it's gonna happen with Blake. I doubt it that box is gonna empty out like we talk about. There's 2 names, actually. It's so funny. You're thinking on the fly. I love this about the podcast. Everything's live. You're thinking on the fly. Everything happens. You always have a couple of regrets when you're done. But I'm going to go with my next guy, and it seems fairly obvious. And people in the podcast are probably scratching their head, chomping at the steering wheel that we haven't even mentioned this guy. Steelers running back Le'Veon Bell. Still tons of mileage on the tire left. Another guy I was thinking is David Johnson. Boy, oh boy, if we were doing this a couple of months ago, he would be clear-cut number 1 guy. I think Dave Johnson is actually a lot more talented than Todd Gurley, than maybe a guy you're going to mention here. But I'm going to go with Le'Veon. His patience, I've never really seen a runner like him before. Consistent results. I know he does play in a really good offense, and minor off-the-field incidents, just like, marijuana, things like that, I think he's figured out. But I look at Le'Veon, really creative running back, a guy that I think is going to play another 5 years and be at a pretty high level, knows how to not take hits. The stuttering is just absolutely incredible. So I'll take Le'Veon. I love the consistency from him. Right,
totally. Here's another guy that I totally slipped my mind. Like you said, this is all live, and everybody always has that, the regrets of not bringing up the player after we're done.
Exactly.
But Devontae Freeman from Atlanta, I love his game. Formerly of Florida State, I think he's fantastic running inside the tackles, outside the tackles, and he's such a dynamic playmaker in the passing game. It's like, man, is this guy hard to stop.
So fast, and he's almost like, I guess maybe Brian Westbrook, but he really is, a pretty special talent. Could Chris Thompson ever kind of get into that conversation for you, or do you just think it's kind of a year thing? Because I look at Freeman, I think he's a lot more talented than Chris, but I mean, Thompson's having some really, solid games this year.
Totally agree with you. And I think the one thing that everyone has to kind of keep an eye on is the running back position is, I would say, is king for like the one-hit wonders. Peyton Hillis is a guy that had this phenomenal season and then just fell off. I mean, running backs, this is the position where you can just have an amazing season one year and completely fall off the next. As far as Thompson goes, I do like how he's a young back. I like how he's really good in the passing game. I don't think he has like top 5 running back potential, but I definitely think he's probably going to be a top 15 back for years to come.
Right. And then we look at a couple of other backs, Cincinnati. It's just a shame that they can never get their guys to really get to their potential. I think Mixon has tons. Gio Bernard could be a Freeman somewhere where he's utilized. He's on the back burner now, unfortunately. I don't know if he'll ever get that confidence or exposure he needs. And Jeremy Hill, man, right? 2 years ago, Jeremy Hill was a guy. And the last guy that I think that we need to give an honorable mention to, I know that he's getting older. He has about a 2-year window where he's still going to be successful. And this guy, if he ever can get close to a championship, I think he needs to put in 3 to 4 more years of great running, but Shady McCoy could maybe be a sneaky Hall of Fame candidate if he gets like 4 more years in.
Big call right there on a Hall of Fame. LaShawn McCoy, definitely watching him, he plays at another gear than everybody else. His elusiveness is mind-blowing, how shifty he is in the backfield. I like it. The Buffalo Bills run that zone blocking scheme, so he has to pick, which hole he wants, and he's just so elusive, so lightning quick that it's just insane. And the thing that's kind of crazy about it is that, you bring up the Hall of Fame, and I'm sitting here because typically I hold Hall of Fame players to a really high standard. I don't just go around throwing, oh, he's a Hall of Famer and this guy's a Hall of Famer. Right. And when you said, Hall of Famer for LaShawn McCoy, it didn't come across to me as like some crazy statement. I think, like you said, if he dominates, or I want to say if he dominates for 2 seasons and has maybe 2 more decent to good seasons after, I think his name could definitely be up there.
There's one other guy that's, and by the way, your boy Tyrod Taylor, I have to admit, he did make some impressive throws. That was a huge game for just his future in the NFL. He's never had a great coordinator. He's a guy that looks at the rush too much. Really has a lot of arm strength, though. I know he can't see over the line, but he had some big plays. That game really was a make-it-or-break-it game for the 2 teams, Tampa and Buffalo. So that was a heck of a win, Ian, for Tyrod.
Right. One thing I just want to mention real quick about Tyrod, and of course this is rapid fire, so I'm just kind of going off the beat.
Yeah.
Tyrod Taylor, I think this guy deserves a ton of credit, and I'm not just saying that because he's my favorite player, but I think this guy was treated poorly all offseason by the Bills. He had to take the pay cut. Basically, being all non-committal on him being the starter. All this tanking for a quarterback talk. I think this guy. When you look at Taylor, I think he's done a fantastic job of just keeping his head on the, just being on the straight and narrow, coming to work, doing his thing, really just giving it 100% effort. And he's forcing the Bills' hand right now. Because, if the Bills want to move forward with another quarterback, then so be it. They can do that. There's no, rules saying you have to move on. Yeah. But right now, man, it's really tough to say, Tyrod, we don't want you because we don't think that you could get the job done. When the Buffalo Bills have notable wins over, the Denver Broncos, the Atlanta Falcons, the Tampa Bay Bucks, I think with all this negative energy swirling around Tyrod, placed upon the fans, the media, and the front office, and even the coaching staff to some degree, I think he's handled it tremendously and has had success on the field and is really just proving his doubters wrong. I know it's a cliche thing to say, but I think this is really what's happening right now in Buffalo.
It's definitely going to be an interesting offseason. And I'd be lying to you if I were Buffalo and I'd say, though, that Tyrod is a full-term solution quarterback because he's just too inconsistent for me. He looks at the rush a little too much. He's a guy that intermediate passing game often isn't there, and sometimes it's not his fault because he's always treated as a gadget guy from the coaching staff. And I'm sure being a Tyrod fan, you're a little bit upset sometimes that it's always read options. There's really not a lot of weapons there. I know for Ty, But he's not a guy that elevates play. And if you can go out and get like a Falk or a Baker Mayfield, I just don't think Tyrod is capable. He needs to have an incredible team around him sort of guy, if he's going to make a Super Bowl run. I think he's a tremendous guy in the interim. Like if I was Jacksonville, Tyrod's a guy you can place and win 11. He can win games for you, but I don't think he's a transcendent, And if I were Buffalo, I would still look for the transcendent guy. You have a new GM. I think that's where they're probably going to go, and that's probably where I would go, though, if I were the Bills.
I agree with you. And, being a Tyrod Taylor fan, I have to trust my eyes. I don't think that Tyrod is the solution there for the next decade. I'm just being real with what I've seen. I just root for him because I like his game. And if I was an offensive coordinator or a quarterback coach, I would just love his skill set, what he brings to the table as far as, throwing and running. I just think he's a rare talent. But, I don't think he's that franchise guy to where I think you can win games with him, like you said. And I think he can be productive. And I do think you can get to the playoffs with him. But I don't see him as an Andrew Luck. I don't see him as a Carson Wentz. I don't see him as a Cam Newton caliber type of player. But, watching Tyrod's game, he definitely – see, the thing that, I'm so fixated on with him is, I love his ability to make plays, but this is only his third year starting. His first 2 years starting, I love his touchdown to interception ratio. He takes care of the ball. He's made the Pro Bowl both years he's started in football. He's made the Pro Bowl. Respected amongst his peers. Yeah. And I just love – I think his deep ball is one of the – I want to say top 3 in the game, his deep ball. His deep ball accuracy is really up there.
It's really underrated. Not a lot of people know about it, Tyrod,
Yeah. And I just think, I think everybody points to his weaknesses, him not being effective in the in the intermediate passing game and really in the middle of the field. I think that's where he struggles because realistically, every time you watch a Bills game, the only times he ever throws in the middle of the field are on scrambles or on broken plays where, a receiver's just trying to get open or something like that. I think he does really well throwing outside the numbers. But it's kind of weird because, you see quarterbacks, they're like vice versa. Sam Darnold, I think, has a really hard time throwing outside the numbers, but I think he's like A++ in the middle of the field. I think he's like a really good middle, but struggles on the outside. So it's always just weird to look at those types of things.
Yeah, some guys, and, I think even middle of the field as a quarterback would be even, more friendly sometimes. But I guess, for Tyrod, when you're trying to cut down on interceptions, middle of the field is where interceptions happen, where drop balls happen, where the coverages are. Outside the numbers, though, those are the tough throws. You need to have a lot of arm strength. It's a risky. You're getting one-on-one coverage. Sometimes you play off, and you can take what the defense gives you, and that's what Ty can do. I wanted to list one more running back that's a Hall of Fame candidate, and then before we jump on out of here, I know we have some topics we're going to get to on the next episode of the Mecca, so please, tune into the show. I then want to do our playoff rankings and what we would like to see from the college football playoff. So first off, another running back, though, before we jump off of the NFL for today is Frank Gore. This is a guy that's an Iron Man. I actually think he's probably going to get a nod for a Hall of Fame. He never was a dominant player. Maybe with San Fran, he was pretty good. Just way too much production, though. Such a long career. I think Frank Gore's going to probably get into the Hall of Fame.
Right. The one thing I will say of Frank Gore, consistency. Consistency is key. He is probably – he's a true professional. Comes into work every single day. And you look at his numbers. His numbers – rushing yards, touchdowns. They're definitely up there with some of the greats. He'll definitely be on the ballot. I don't have any doubts about that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so Ian, right now, I want you to now list your projected playoffs, what you think is going to happen, and then what you want to. Yeah, and go ahead. You actually have a point though.
For the NFL or college football?
For college football.
Okay, because the NFL, I would have been here for 20 minutes, but
it would be a 16 team.
Yeah, I know.
And then would have had to go the wild card. Go like, are the Dolphins going to sneak in? Or the Bills? Atlanta? Oh, that would have been funny, man. Next time we'll do that. Where you have to map out all the seeds.
Yeah, maybe on another episode. But as far as college goes, I think right now, my rankings, I think the number one spot goes to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Talk about dominance. I think Nick Saban is still the best coach in college football. To me, they have the best defense in college football. Second best overall defensive line. I think they could run the ball effectively. Jalen Hurts, I think, is poised. I think he takes care of the football. Although he is inexperienced, I like how he can move on the run. I got the Crimson Tide being 1. Plus, they're undefeated in the SEC. Right now at 2, let me see. I guess I got to go Penn State.
Do you want to do end of the year, or do you want to do right now? Like, do you want to project? Because I kind of want to project a little bit.
Okay, let's project. Man, this is going to be tough. I still think Alabama will finish 1.
Yeah.
So that's for me set in stone at least.
They're undefeated, actually. I think they beat Georgia. They go to Auburn and win. So I would agree with you. I think Alabama,
right.
Dead end, 1,000%.
It's funny in regards to Alabama. Quick little thing. I think a sleeper team that can upset them is Auburn at the end of the season. I think Auburn has a lot of talent, and maybe I don't know where the game's played, but maybe if Auburn catches Alabama sleeping, maybe that we could be in store for a gem. So just want to throw that out there. Yeah. So Bama 1. Number 2, I got the Georgia Bulldogs. And I just think right now the Georgia Bulldogs, they're at a level of dominance where it's just incredible to watch. Sony Michel, Nick Chubb. They got who's the other guy?
Swift.
They got Swift. Yeah, DeAndre Swift.
Yep.
That guy's a beast too.
Isaac Neal at the tight end. Yep.
Yeah, their linebacking core is absolutely incredible. They got players that will be playing on Sundays all across this defense. I think Kirby Smart comes in and he does a great job not only with play calling, morale, all that stuff, but he does a fantastic job with recruiting. They actually just got Justin Fields. I know this doesn't really impact the playoff prediction, but this guy –
no, it's too exciting to talk about.
Yeah, they just got Justin Fields. I mean, this guy, he's like a Cam Newton style of player. You look at this past season, they got Jay Fromm, 5-star quarterback. I believe he was the number one quarterback prospect, either him or Tate Martell, who's at Ohio State.
Yeah.
And then you look at the year before that, and they got Jacob Eason. Obviously, Mark Richt recruited him, who's now at the Hurricanes. But overall, man, I just feel like the Georgia Bulldogs, they don't really have a weakness. They, if Fromm goes down, you got Eason. I just love what the Bulldogs have done this season, where they're going to be going in the future. And, I'm in love with this Bulldogs team. 3, I really don't want to say Penn State because I think they'll lose against Ohio State this weekend. But right now, I think I thought Michigan was going to win. I thought Michigan was going to beat Penn State this past weekend. But
we were there together, my friend.
Yeah, I was completely wrong on that. Penn State shut me up real quick. I thought
14-13, and you know what happened? It's like, McSorley, he did make some amazing plays, but they had that Hamilton guy that came out of nowhere, and that defensive line was straight nasty. I underrated them all year long. James Franklin, he's a miracle worker. How many games, Ian, have you watched Penn State and you're like, this is where Penn State falls back down to, the pretty good team? How about the Wisconsin Big Ten Championship? How about the Rose Bowl? McSorley, he's just magic. I'm just almost just I'm now, even if Penn State was going against Alabama, it's like James Franklin is just such a miracle worker. I'm not comfortable going against Penn State. I've just been wrong on them a couple of times so much. They just seem like an invincible team sometimes, Ian, Penn State.
I agree with you. Yeah, they shut me up last week. I thought Michigan was going to get the job done.
This is going to be awesome. I think they have a chance. Their defense has to shut down JT Barrett because we saw what Mayfield did there. They have a chance this week.
One quick thing to note. I know we're trying to air this stuff out quickly.
I love when you go off the course, man, because then we can get back on the course.
If I'm a Penn State player, I am totally amped up for this game because not only did Penn State beat them last season, but they won the Big Ten, and they didn't make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
They basically got shafted by the committee. And if I'm a Penn State player, I'm sitting there thinking, what more do we have to do? We beat Ohio State, we won the Big Ten, and yet we still don't make it. Ohio State gets the nod, and they just get absolutely embarrassed by Clemson. And if I'm a Penn State fan, I mean, I know a lot of people out there are saying, oh, Ohio State's going to be looking for revenge. I don't buy that. I think Penn State is going to be the group, the team that's going to come out with a chip on their shoulder and basically just say, we're the real team in the Big Ten because we got screwed last season.
It's a huge game for JT Barrett's legacy. This game right here for Urban Meyer, for Franklin. I mean, it's so massive. And the Penn State blocked field goal, I watched the Penn State last year. They got blown out by Michigan, by Pittsburgh. They weren't an elite team at all. And they just hit the jackpot. It's very similar, actually, to Carson Wentz in Philadelphia. They just kept on racking up wins. The confidence just grew. James Franklin, believe it or not, Ian, like I live near, Penn State. So I actually have a pulse on what's going on. If you remember James Franklin before that Ohio State game, he was on thin ice there, man.
He was. He's always been known as a great recruiter.
He was.
Yeah, he's always been really good at recruiting, but like in-game coaching, in-game game management, he's always somewhat struggled with.
Struggled his first couple of years bad, some really questionable calls with him.
Yeah, but I think now that he has his prospects that can fit into his system, that they're running it how he wants to run it, I think you're seeing that kind of pay off.
He's open, exactly. So you probably have Penn State and then your last team in the playoff.
Last team. Here's a team for you that might get some heat by the listeners, but it's a team to keep your eye on. Notre Dame Fighting Irish 4. I think if they can run this table, I mean they got NC State this week. They're ranked 14. I know later on in the season they got Miami right now, who I think is like a house of cards, but they're ranked 8th, and I think they play Stanford as well. And if they could just run the table, I don't see in any scenario where you can say Notre Dame, you can't make it. When their only loss will be to Georgia, when they beat in Miami, NC State, Stanford, they have notable wins. I just think you can't leave the Fighting Irish out.
USC, completely agree.
Yes, USC.
Their defense is awesome. We say what we want about Brian Kelly, how he treats Kaiser, how he's kind of a salty dog, but that defense is coming alive, man. Completely agree. USC is awesome. I love Wimbush, their quarterback. Their running back doesn't get any hype at all. The Adams kid. I mean, he's really off the radar for the Heisman. It's so funny. Usually Notre Dame is really prevalent when they shouldn't be, and it's like the complete opposite this year. In terms of teams I want to see, in the playoff, Ian, like for Clemson, for me, Deshaun is a great guy, in every sense, Deshaun Watson. Kind of enjoyed watching him play, but it's kind of around here and everywhere. There's so many bandwagon Clemson fans that I kind of want to see new blood. If I had to pick a national champion, and I don't really have like a college team at the moment, I would love to see Baker Mayfield win one. He came back for his senior year. He's a guy, I love him. He's a hot-button quarterback. You either love Baker or you think he's cocky, kind of D-bag, a-hole, whatever you want to say. And a lot of people don't like Baker Mayfield. I happen to really like him. He makes college football awesome. He's so improvisational. He came back versus Kansas State. He's clutch. I really like Baker Mayfield. And I don't know what you think about Baker, but if I had to pick a national champion, it would be Oklahoma. It would be the coolest thing.
I think Oklahoma is going to finish with that first spot outside of the playoff. I think they're going to be that 5th spot.
With a one loss.
With one loss.
They are the biggest Ohio State fans this week.
Agreed. I mean, when you look at Oklahoma's schedule and the way it's set up, I mean, everyone talks bad about the Big 12. Me personally, the Big 12 is my favorite conference, but I think if Oklahoma can finish with one loss, and that one loss being against Iowa State, they're going to they have a win over Ohio State. They're assuming, they run the table here. They're going to have a win over TCU, Oklahoma State, West Virginia. These are all powerhouse teams. And that's just a nice resume to have, at
It
the
might
end of the
be
season.
TCU's as well. I think they get a championship game in the Big 12 finally. So, I look at that and I think that they actually get a Big 12 championship.
Well, yeah. Well, the main reason why everyone hates the Big 12 is because there's actually no championship game. It's like whoever finishes with the best conference record. That's why they always have like one less game than everybody else.
We'll have to see.
As far as champions go.
I think it's this. I hope it's this year. But yeah, I'm gonna go with my playoff four, man. This is what I really think is gonna happen. I still lean Ohio State over Penn State. Kind of want to see it happen. It would trick up the playoff even more. I think Ohio State beats Wisconsin and goes 12-1. So you have Ohio State. Believe it or not, my upset special of the year is I think I have two upsets that I'm going to pull, but Auburn.
UCF?
UCF and Scotty. Auburn, UCF. Playoff. Auburn is beating Georgia, man.
Wow.
Auburn is definitely beating Georgia to me, man. I look at Auburn. I know that they had a terrible second half against LSU, but the game's in Jordan Hare. One thing about Jake Fromm, as much as we like his persona, as much as he's an accurate passer 10 yards, he's a guy that cannot throw the ball over 25 to 30 yards. Like, I remember when Cardale Jones was inserted into the playoff and he had that special it factor because he had a massive arm and he was able to hit Devin Smith and make magic happen. Unfortunately for Fromm, he's capped in that area. That's why he'll be a fourth rounder, and unfortunately he will be a guy that's never really a starter. He's like a Connor Cook. As much as we love Jake Fromm, that's just his arm strength is just capped. So that's why they won't beat Alabama, because they don't have that huge passing game. And I can see Auburn really beating Georgia. And I think that that's going to shake things up. Another game to watch is NC State and Clemson. I'm kind of sick of Clemson, like I said, but if they run the table, they're going to be awfully hard to kick out. So we have Alabama, Notre Dame, I think it's going to be in. So I have Georgia, 2 losses. I have Alabama, Notre Dame. Then I'm going to take Ohio State and Oklahoma as my teams. And no Pac-12 love at all. And Oklahoma, yes, the 3rd seed in this playoff for me.
Okay, let me ask you this. Let's just have some fun with it. Who are your first 2 teams out? Because those first 2 teams out, they get, I think, I don't know what bowl it is this season. It could be the Sugar Bowl. I know last season it was the Rose, and it was Penn State USC, and that game was a gem.
I think it's going to be – I look at, the Penn State, Wisconsin's. You're going to have Big Ten teams at the top. One loss Wisconsin's certainly going to be there. They're going to run the table in the regular season unbelievably. You look at Miami, NC State are contenders for that spot. I'm pretty comfortable saying Washington, will probably be somewhere with Coach Peterson. Not an exciting team by any means. I don't know about you, but yeah, I'll go Penn State and Wisconsin actually at those 2 slots.
Okay, I'm gonna go Ohio State, and I think it's either gonna come down to I think it's gonna be one Big Ten versus one Big 12. I just think the ACC is kind of like cannibalized itself. Florida State hurting, like obviously with Francois going down. Louisville, their defense, Lamar Jackson doesn't really have that much. The defense is basically non-existent. Clemson is still a powerhouse, so Clemson is a team to watch in that I guess the trifecta of the runner-up in the Big 12, the runner-up in the Big 10, and then Clemson. So that's kind of my mindset on the whole thing.
Probably. And it's interesting, man, because you look at, the committee, I think that they want to get a couple of teams in there. I think that Penn State and Oklahoma are teams that they would like. The committee, they can't feel good. They can't feel good about leaving Penn State out last year, especially when, JT Barrett went to Glendale, Arizona and put up goose egg. So the committee, I think Penn State has to be in their graces. I look at Baker Mayfield, how exciting it would be for a senior year. My last kind of question to you, Ian, it's been a lot of fun on the Mecca as always, man. We can even probably go on another hour just talking. Mason Rudolph, unfortunately, man, I think that last week was a killer game for the kids' draft stock. he has kind of a weird release where it's not like he's even holding the football, kind of. You know what I mean? When I watch Mason throw, I mean, he throws kind of a nice deep ball. I'm really just not – he's a little fidgety. I'm just not sold on Mason. And I think last week's game, to me, it kind of hurt his draft stock, unfortunately, for the kid.
Right. I think Tom Herman did a really nice job preparing for Oklahoma State. You know, you look at Malik Jefferson and these guys on the Texas Longhorn defense. I thought they did, a tremendous job on covering this all-out aerial attack that, you know, is the Oklahoma State Cowboys. I mean, they got James Washington, McCleskey. Their running back, I think, is a top three round talent, you know, as far as playing on Sunday. Excuse me, still a little bit under the weather.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think Oklahoma State, if Oklahoma State can beat TCU in Oklahoma, and they got West Virginia, they're a ranked team this week.
Yes.
You know, I think.
1 second.
I'm leaving, Spency, to go to my dinner.
Okay, you're on the podcast, so yeah. Just don't say anything that
Hey.
can to a court of law.
What, to say how handsome you are?
Oh, gosh.
And yeah, anyway, I think Oklahoma State, if they can run the table, they can make noise because they're going to have notable wins. But as far as, you know, Mason Rudolph goes, he actually reminds me a lot of Bryce Petty, your guy Bryce. Same sort of release, same conference, same style. You know, they had the same body type. I think they're both around 6'4",
Yeah.
around that 220 range with that same kind. It's almost like they were coached the same way, or coached by the same person. It's kind of weird, like thinking about that. But they just remind me of each other.
They look similar, like their faces. Oh. Ian, man, how cool would it be if Bryce, the first start, man, a little sneak peek. We're talking about it, trying to go to Jets Bills. If Bryce could come back. Oh my God.
That would be definitely a game to remember. Man, I can't wait. I cannot wait to experience that. It's going to be a blast.
Yep, and that segues into some other things. So, Ian, man, great time on the Mecca today. Really enjoyed it. I think next week we're going to get into a routine of doing 2 of these podcasts. We'll even preview some games for y'all next week. But thanks for tuning in, guys, to the Mecca.